I didn't panic when I found the envelope taped beneath the dashboard of my pickup. My hands were steady as I peeled it loose, feeling the unmistakable weight inside. Cash. A lot of it. Maybe drugs. I knew exactly who had put it there. My son, Daniel. I sat in my driveway in Greeley, Colorado, the late February wind rocking the truck slightly, and I made a decision that would change the course of my family forever. I took the envelope, walked across the gravel to where Daniel's Toyota Corolla was parked, opened the passenger door, and slipped it into the glove compartment. Then I went inside, poured myself a cup of coffee, and waited. 26 minutes later, I heard sirens. Let me back up. My name is Walter Brooks. I'm 65 years old. I spent 36 years working maintenance at a sugar beet processing plant outside Greeley before I retired. My wife, Marianne, passed away 5 years ago after a long illness. We raised 2 kids in a modest ranch-style house, lived carefully, saved what we could, and somehow managed to put both through college without debt. That was our pride. Our legacy. Daniel is my youngest. He's 40 now. Married to Elena, who works in medical sales. They have a 6-year-old daughter, my granddaughter, Sophie. For most of his life, I believed I knew my son. I was wrong. It started about 3 months earlier. Daniel asked to borrow my truck for a weekend. Said his car was in the shop. Transmission issues. I didn't question it. Had borrowed it before, hauling furniture, picking up lumber, normal things. I handed him the keys and told him to bring it back with a full tank. When he returned it Sunday night, something felt off. He was restless. Kept checking his phone every few seconds. When I asked if everything was okay, he snapped. Yeah, Dad. I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be? Then he apologized quickly. Blamed work stress. Left. The next morning, I found a small plastic bag wedged between the driver's seat and the center console. Empty, but not clean. There was a residue. A sharp chemical smell. I'd been around long enough to recognize it. My stomach dropped. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone else had used the truck. Maybe I was wrong. But I wasn't. 6 weeks later, Daniel borrowed the truck again. He called on a Wednesday evening, said his car was acting up, asked if he could take the truck Thursday morning for a quick errand. I said yes. I always said yes to my son. This time, I paid attention. When he returned the truck that afternoon, I watched from the living room window. He sat behind the wheel for nearly 5 minutes after parking, talking on his phone, scanning the street. When he finally came inside, he was sweating despite the cold. Thanks, Dad, he said, handing me the keys. You saved me. Anytime, I replied. That's what family's for. He hugged me. And I felt him shaking. After he left, I went out to the truck with a flashlight. I searched everywhere, under the seats, in the glove box, behind the visors. Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed the carpet near the pedals was slightly loose. I lifted it. There was a phone. Not a smartphone. A cheap prepaid burner you could buy at any gas station. I powered it on. Dozens of messages. Numbers. Addresses in Denver. Times. One text made my blood run cold. The old man's truck is perfect. Nobody ever checks a grandpa. I sat there for an hour reading everything. My son was using my vehicle to move drugs. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike. The kid who cried when we buried our dog. The man I'd watched cross the stage at his college graduation. He was dealing, and using me as cover. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it, smoothed the carpet down, and went inside. I barely slept that night. Mariana's voice kept echoing in my head. Something she once said when the kids were teenagers and got caught lying. Trust is earned twice. Once when they tell the truth, and again when they fix what they broke. Daniel hadn't been honest. But I was going to give him a chance to fix this. The next morning, I called him. Daniel, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come by this weekend? There was a pause. Sure, Dad. Everything okay? Well, talk Saturday. Saturday came. Daniel arrived alone. Said Elena had taken Sophie to her parents' place in Fort Collins. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Marianne used to make pancakes every Sunday, where we helped with homework, celebrated birthdays, lived our lives. I found something in my truck, I said. His face drained of color. What do you mean? I slid the burner phone across the table. His hand shot forward, then stopped midair. He looked at me, really looked at me, with eyes I didn't recognize. There was calculation there. Weighing options. Deciding whether to lie, or finally tell the truth. Dad, I can explain, he said. Then explain. And he did, sort of. He told me he'd gotten mixed up with some people in Aurora, said it started with a business opportunity that went bad. An investment. Promises that didn't pan out. He said he owed money and didn't know how else to pay it back. They offered me a way out, he said quickly. Just a couple of runs. That's it. Just enough to clear the debt. He swore it was over. Said he was done. Every word was a lie. I could see it in the way he wouldn't look at me. In how the details shifted every time I asked a question. When I asked how much he owed, he said 20,000. Then 30. Then admitted he wasn't exactly sure. Daniel, I said quietly, you used me. You put me at risk. He flinched. If you'd been pulled over, I continued, that's my truck. My name on the registration. I could have lost everything. I know, Dad, he whispered. I'm sorry. I really am. And Sophie? I asked. What happens to your daughter when this catches up with you? That's when he broke. My son, nearly 40 years old, collapsed in tears at my kitchen table like a little boy who'd shattered something irreplaceable. Eve ruined everything, he sobbed. I don't know how to fix it. Every instinct in me wanted to pull him into a hug. To promise we'd figure it out together. But something held me back. Maybe it was the memory of that burner phone. Maybe it was the messages that talked about my truck like it was disposable. Maybe it was the image of Sophie growing up visiting her father through bulletproof glass. You need to stop, I said finally. Today. Right now. I can't, he said, lifting his head. These aren't people you just walk away from. Then we go to the police, I said. We tell them everything. We cooperate. The fear drained from his face, replaced by something cold. I'm not going to prison. Son, I said softly, if you keep doing this, prison is the best outcome. He stood up. I have to go. Daniel, wait, but he was already out the door. I sat there long after I heard his car pull away, staring at the empty chair across from me. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that he wasn't going to stop. He would keep using my truck. Keep putting me at risk. Keep dragging our family deeper into whatever darkness had stepped into. That night, I made a decision. If my son wouldn't protect himself, I'd have to protect him another way. And I'd have to protect myself. Protect Sophie. Protect what was left of our family. The next time Daniel asked to borrow my truck, I said yes. It was a Thursday morning. He showed up just after 7, said he needed it for a few hours to pick up building supplies. I handed him the keys and watched him drive away. The moment he turned the corner, I got into Mariana's old Corolla and followed. He didn't go anywhere near a hardware store. He drove straight to a Starbucks parking lot near Interstate 25, where he sat for about 15 minutes. Then a black BMW pulled up beside him. A man got out, glanced around, and climbed into my truck. They talked for maybe 5 minutes. When the man left, he was carrying a large shopping bag. Daniel drove to 2 more locations that morning. Same routine every time. Meet. Talk briefly. Exchange bags. By the time he returned my truck just before noon, I had photos of every stop. Every person. Every license plate. "Thanks, Dad," he said, handing me the keys. "I really appreciate it." "No problem, son," I replied. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my computer reviewing the photos, weighing every option. I could go to the police right then. But Daniel was right about one thing: the people he was dealing with wouldn't take that lightly. Even if he entered witness protection, what about Elena? What about Sophie? I thought about Marianne. She'd always been better at hard decisions. Calmer. Clearer. I imagined her sitting across from me at that kitchen table, that thoughtful look she had when she was working through something difficult. "You have to stop him," I could almost hear her say. "But you have to do it smart." The plan came together slowly. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was the only way I could see to protect my son from himself, without destroying the rest of us. 3 weeks later, Daniel called again. "Dad, I hate to ask, but can I borrow the truck tomorrow afternoon? Just for a couple of hours." "Of course," I said. "I'll leave the keys in the visor." "You're the best, Dad." This time, I knew exactly what I was doing. After Daniel picked up the truck, but before he started his route, I drove straight to the Greeley Police Department. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to control. I walked up to the front desk, my hands shaking despite my best effort to stay calm, and told them I needed to speak with an officer about suspected drug trafficking. They didn't brush me off. A patrol officer named Officer Ramirez, mid-30s, calm voice, kind eyes that reminded me painfully of Marianne, brought me into a small interview room and listened to everything. The photos. The coded messages ID photographed from the burner phone. The locations. The pattern. I told her I believed my son was making a run that very afternoon. That he was using my truck. And that I needed help. "Mr. Brooks," she said gently, "what you're doing takes a lot of courage." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But I'm more afraid of what happens if I do nothing. My granddaughter needs her father. Even if that means her father has to go to prison to finally get help." Things moved fast after that. Officer Ramirez brought in a detective, Detective Alvarez, who specialized in narcotics. Within an hour, they had a plan. They would intercept Daniel during the run, search the vehicle, and make the arrest. If he cooperated, if he gave them names above him, the district attorney would take that into account. "We can't make promises," Detective Alvarez said. "But cooperation matters." "I understand. There's one more thing," he added. "We need reasonable certainty there's contraband in the vehicle. If you're willing to verify." That's when I told them about the envelope. I said ID found it taped under the dashboard that morning when I went out to check something in the truck. I told them I hadn't touched it, only taken photos, and came straight to the station. What I didn't tell them was everything. I didn't tell them about the decision ID made the night before. That if they were going to search my truck anyway, if they were going to arrest my son anyway, I wanted it to happen sooner, not later. Before Daniel went deeper. before he crossed a line he couldn't come back from. So that morning, before going to the police, I had removed the envelope. And I had placed it in Daniel's car, in the glove compartment, where any routine traffic stop would find it. Then I went to the police and told them my son was using my truck to transport drugs. The operation was supposed to be straightforward. They would follow Daniel, wait for the first stop, then move in. But ID unknowingly changed the equation. When they ran Daniel's license plate for surveillance, a patrol unit in Loveland flagged it. Said they'd already been watching that vehicle. Said they had reasonable suspicion. 26 minutes after I got home from the station, I heard sirens. 3 squad cars boxed in Daniel's Toyota in a grocery store parking lot. They found the envelope in the glove compartment. Inside, $42,000 in cash and enough fentanyl to charge him with trafficking. My phone rang an hour later. It was Elena. They arrested Daniel, she said, her voice shaking. They're saying he had drugs in his car. They're saying he's a dealer. This has to be a mistake. You have to help him. Where's Sophie? I asked. She's with my mom. Good, I said. Listen to me very carefully. Take Sophie and stay there. Don't go home. Don't answer calls unless it's me or a lawyer. Do you understand? Richard, Walter, why? She said, panicked. What's happening? Just trust me, I said. I'll explain everything. But right now, I need you to keep Sophie safe and stay away from the house. There was a long silence. Then, quietly, she said, you knew. Yes, I said. I tried to help him stop, I continued. He wouldn't. And in that moment, saying it out loud, I finally understood the weight of what I'd done. I hadn't betrayed my son. I'd saved what was left of him, even if it meant breaking his heart first. Oh my God, Elena whispered on the phone. Walter, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry too, I said quietly. But this was the only way. She hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, feeling like I'd shoved my own son off a cliff and was praying there was a net somewhere below. The next 3 days were hell. Daniel was denied bail. The prosecutor argued he was a flight risk, that he had ties to organized crime, and that the amount of fentanyl found in his possession suggested he wasn't a low-level courier but a serious distributor. The evidence was overwhelming. I was allowed to see him on the 4th day. They brought him into the visitation room wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists cuffed. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in less than a week. When he saw me through the glass, he picked up the phone on his side. You did this, he said. His voice was flat. Empty. You put that stuff in my car. Daniel, I said, steadying my breath, don't lie to me. Not now. They told me, he continued, his eyes never leaving mine, that the envelope they found wasn't where they expected it to be. Their surveillance shows you drove the truck that morning. But the drugs were in my car. He swallowed. You moved it. You set me up. I didn't deny it. I found it in my truck, I said. I moved it to yours. And yes, I called the police. Why? He demanded. Why would you do this to me? Because I love you, I said. Because you're my son, and I watched you destroy yourself. Because Sophie needs her father. And the longer this went on, the more likely it was she'd lose you forever. So I'm going to prison because you love me? He said bitterly. That's your logic. You were already going to prison, I replied. It was only a matter of time. At least this way, you have a chance. He laughed, sharp and hollow. A chance at what? The police want you to cooperate, I said. They want the people above you. If you give them real information, they'll work with the district attorney. You could be out in 3 years instead of 10. And you thought you had the right to decide that for me? I leaned forward, pressing my hand against the glass. When you used my truck to move drugs, you made me an accomplice. You risked my freedom. My home. Everything your mother and I worked our entire lives to build. I held his gaze. You made that decision without asking me. So yes, I made one without asking you. I chose to protect myself, protect Sophie, and protect you from yourself in the only way I knew how. Daniel slammed the phone down and turned away. The guard had to escort him out. He stood there with his back to me, shoulders shaking, unable to move. I stayed seated long after they took him back to his cell. The next 2 months were worse before they got better. Elena filed for divorce. She moved in with her parents and was granted a restraining order. Daniel's lawyer advised him to accept the deal being offered. 15 years, eligible for parole after 5, if he cooperated fully. Daniel cooperated. He gave them everything. Names. Addresses. Supply routes. Distribution networks. His information led to 17 arrests, including 2 people law enforcement had been trying to catch for years. The charges against him were reduced. He was sentenced to 8 years, eligible for parole after 3. The day of sentencing, he looked at me from across the courtroom. I couldn't read his expression. Anger. Grief. Relief. Maybe all of it at once. Afterward, Detective Alvarez found me in the hallway. Mr. Brooks, he said, I know this couldn't have been easy. What you did saved your son's life. The people he was involved with, they don't let people walk away. Eventually, he would have ended up dead or in prison forever. Does he see it that way? I asked. Not yet, the detective said. But someday? Probably. I visit Daniel once a month. He wouldn't speak to me at all for the first 6 months. He'd sit there, eyes on the floor, saying nothing. And I'd sit across from him in silence, because sometimes love isn't fixing things. Sometimes it's just showing up, even when you're hated for doing the right thing. Our conversation stayed careful at first. Polite. Surface level. Daniel told me about the programs he'd enrolled in, anger management, addiction counseling, the hours he spent working in the prison library. He mentioned helping other inmates study for their GEDs. He asked about Sophie. I showed him photos on my phone. She's 8 now. Doing well in school. Taking piano lessons. Missing her front teeth in the way kids that age always do. He never asked about Elena. They're divorced now. She's seeing someone, a 4th-grade teacher from Sophie's school. I met him once. He seems steady. Kind. The kind of man you hope your child ends up around. Then, last month, something shifted. Daniel called me on a Wednesday evening, not our usual day. When I accepted the collect call, his voice sounded different. Clearer. Grounded. Dad, he said, Eve been doing a lot of thinking. A lot of therapy. They have programs here that really make you face why you made the choices you did. That's good, I said. And I meant it. I want you to know, he continued, I understand why you did what you did. I'm not saying I'm okay with it yet, but I understand. And my therapist says understanding is the first step. Something loosened in my chest, something that had been tight for nearly 2 years. I'm glad you're getting help, son. I'm going to be a better father, he said. When I get out, I want to be the dad Sophie deserves. The dad you were to me, before I messed everything up. You were always a good kid, I told him. You made bad choices. That doesn't erase who you are underneath. He hesitated. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think Mom would have done what you did if she were still alive? I thought about Marianne, her quiet strength, her ability to make the hardest decisions without turning them into battles. Yes, I said finally. She would have done exactly what I did. She would have protected you, even from yourself. There was a long silence. Then he said softly, "Tell Sophie I love her. And tell her Grandpa Walter is the best grandpa in the world, and that she should listen to everything he says." I smiled, even though my eyes burned. "I will," I said. "I promise." Now I see Sophie every weekend. Elena drops her off Saturday morning and picks her up Sunday night. We bake cookies. Watch movies. Work on puzzles at the kitchen table. She talks about school, her friends, her piano recitals. Sometimes she asks about her dad. I tell her the truth, in ways an 8-year-old can hold. I tell her daddy made some mistakes, and he's learning how to do better. That he loves her very much. That sometimes people we love need help, and sometimes that help doesn't look the way we expect. Last weekend, while we were baking chocolate chip cookies, Sophie looked up at me, flour on her nose, and asked, "Grandpa, my teacher says family means we take care of each other no matter what. Is that true?" I thought about Daniel behind bars. About the choice I made that put him there. About Elena rebuilding her life. About Marianne, gone now but still guiding me every day. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "That's true. But sometimes taking care of each other means making really hard choices. Like when you make me go to bed even when I want to stay up." I smiled. "Exactly like that." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to stirring the dough. Here's what I learned, something Marianne tried to teach me years ago, but I didn't fully understand until the hardest moment of my life. Love isn't just about making people happy. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even when they hurt. Sometimes love means letting someone face consequences, because consequences can save lives. I think about that envelope often. The one I found taped under my dashboard. The one I moved. People might judge me for that. They might say I betrayed my son. That I should have found another way. Maybe they're right. I'll never know. What I do know is this. Daniel is alive. He's getting help. He has a chance to rebuild his relationship with his daughter. In a few years, he could be out on parole. He could still have a life. That wouldn't have happened if I'd done nothing. The people he was involved with don't offer second chances. Eventually, he would have ended up dead, or in prison forever, or worse, responsible for someone else's death. There's a photo on my mantle from Sophie's 7th birthday, taken just before everything collapsed. Daniel has her on his shoulders. They're both laughing at something Elena said. Every time I look at it, I hold on to the hope that somewhere inside the man in the prison uniform, that father still exists. When Daniel becomes eligible for parole, he'll be there. He'll tell the board about the programs he's completed, the remorse he's shown, the man he's trying to become. He'll advocate for him the same way I once worked to stop him. Because that's what family means. Not that we never hurt each other. Not that we always agree. Not that we enable destruction in the name of loyalty. Family means loving each other enough to make the hard choices. Sometimes that means protecting each other from the world. And sometimes, the hardest part, it means protecting the people we love from themselves. Even when it breaks our hearts. Even when they hate us for it. Even when we lie awake at night wondering if we did the right thing. I still wonder. Probably always will. But when Sophie hugs me goodbye on Sunday nights, when Daniel calls to tell me about the changes he's making, when I think about Marianne and hope I made her proud, I think maybe I did. Maybe love isn't about keeping people comfortable. Maybe love is about keeping them alive long enough to find their way back. That's what I tell myself. That's what lets me sleep at night. And that's the lesson I hope Sophie carries with her as she grows up, the one I wish I could have taught Daniel before everything fell apart. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who refuse to let us fail. Trust your instincts about the people you love. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Address it early. Address it honestly. Don't excuse behavior you know is destructive, even when it's family. Set boundaries. Enforce them. And if you ever have to choose between protecting someone from consequences or protecting them from themselves, remember this. Consequences are temporary. Death is permanent. Choose life. Choose the hard conversation. Choose intervention over enabling. Choose love that disappoints today over regret that lasts forever. That's my story. That's what I did. Whether it was right or wrong, I'll leave that judgment to God. For now, I just keep showing up, for Sophie, for Daniel, for the family Marianne and I built together. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do. We show up. We choose with the information we have. We love imperfectly, and hope it's enough. Thank you for spending this time with Rising Strong. If this story meant something to you, stay with us, subscribe to the channel and keep rising, one story at a time.